Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of And Still Boxing. This one happens to be on the road in Melbourne, so not the usual setup, but you'll be fine. What we're going to go over today is last week's fight between Tszyu and Joey Spencer. Now, this was in Tszyu Castle. We're going to go over some of the fight cards, what this means for Tszyu, just a couple of thoughts that I have. I'm going to go over a couple of things, say top 5 heavyweights in Australia right now, controversial list. A rising star is Callum Peters right now. He got this guy out in the first round TKO. This guy's really, really good. This guy has those boxing skills. He dominated. Callum Peters is a vaunted amateur. He is a good talker as well, so I think that No Limit has something pretty good brewing there, and we're going to see where he brews up. Obviously, not everyone can be world champion, but in this spot, he has the potential to. He has such great boxing ability, and William Lenehan, he wasn't quite up to scratch, but that's fine when you're such a vaunted amateur like Callum Peters. Your first fight's going to be obviously tomato cans, if you will. They're going to be the guys that are beatable to acclimate to the professional ranks. Some of the other ones that I really want to talk about, Liam Talivaa and Brandon Grach. This fight, in my opinion, potentially took over and overshadowed the main comeback of Tszyu. Now, Australia's in a very, very fortunate position, very different position at the moment, in the sense that we're having a new wave. We're having almost our first wave of competitive heavyweights ever, and it's actually amazing. And this was one of those fights where it's a heavyweight fight, and then there was a bit of shit talking there. There's a bit of trash talking. Hey, at the open workout, I was there, man. I was there, and they were like actually going at each other. There was even a third party there. It was Jackson Murray. He was there as well, trying to get his name, throw his hat in the ring, if you will, saying, hey, I'm a guy. Hey, I'm somebody here to be aware of. And that's somebody that is in the dark horse, if you will, to become someone in the heavyweight division. And I'll tell you more about him in a minute if you don't know enough. But it's very interesting. The fight and the co-main event, Liam Talivaa versus Brandon Grach. Grach being the hometown boy up in Newcastle or that area. Listen, he came out and there was trash talking between the two. If you don't know, the first fight, actually, there's a bunch of knockdowns like the first round. It came out like the second round, I think it was. And Grach knocked Talivaa out. I think it was like a right cross or right hand. And it just put him to sleep. And this was their rematch. Now it was going to be basically repeat or revenge. And the result was Liam Talivaa with a 5th round TKO. Now, I just want to say something. My ability to predict fights and how they go is solely above average. But there's this guy that was working next to me. We'll work in the media. And this guy next to me, photographer, who's like, oh, mate, let me tell you this right now. This is going 1 round. And I go, listen, bro, they both have knockout power. They're both aware of each other's ability. What's happening right now is that they're going to come out a little bit more cautious, a bit more game planny, because even Liam Talivaa said, listen, once I got him hurt, I came there trying to take his head off and he caught me with a counter. All right, they're both tough guys. They both got good chins. All right, yeah, you heard him, and obviously both got power, knockout power. So I knew there was going to be a bit more strategy to it, a bit more finesse, as opposed to come in, let's bang it out, all right? And there's going to be something different. So the way it really panned out was Brandon Grach had quite a significant height advantage over Talivaa, and he was trying to use it, okay? Jab, jab, and really try to extend that right hand. However, one thing which I think they did pick up in the previous camp from the fight is that he may have tended to overreach with that right hand. Now, a lot of people don't know that Brandon Grach was coming off I can't remember if it was right or a left tendon tear, biceps tendon tear. So he's recovered that, and he was looking good. He was looking lean. He was looking very quick. I saw him in a couple of open workouts, the things that we like here on And Still Boxing. And he was coming I reckon he could have gone all the rounds. I think it was meant to be a 10-rounder. Anyway, he came out trying to keep it long, trying to get Talivaa to walk onto the power because he has a significant reach advantage and height advantage. But Talivaa, he was doing a little bit something different here. He was countering, all right, and he was a bit more movement. He wasn't going in there just trying to take his head off with that power that Samoan fighters are renowned to have. So seeing that boxing IQ and those little veteran moves and having the patience to sit there and wait for the shots. It was something nice to see from those heavyweights, a little bit of like a boxing IQ, if you will. So Grach, as I said, trying to box at range. He had a bit of success early. I think he might have stunned him within those first couple of rounds a few times. However, Liam Talivaa seems to have taken it pretty well, and he was moving quite a bit. But the key factor, and something that I picked up very, very soon, all right, very quickly, should I say, was that he'd back up when Grach would go on the assault, okay? But then when he would overextend with that right hand, he'd slam on the brakes, counter, lead hook. And it happened a few times. And the man has power. You can't be walking onto those shots. And he was pretty much luring him onto those shots. All right, Brandon Grach, that is. He was getting hit with those counters. And I found that the first X factor. And I'm like, okay, this is it. This is what they're doing. This is what they wanted to do, in the sense that we want him to come onto the shots as opposed to the other way around. In that round 5, there was quite a bit of movement from Talivaa throughout those first few rounds. And round 5, I saw him slowing down a little bit. All right, now I don't want to take favourites, but I like them both. They're both good guys. I do want him slowing down, Liam. Like, hey, keep the movement up, keep the movement up, keep that head movement up. Don't be a stationary target. And that's what I was worried about. He got that counter. I think it was the right hook and the uppercut, that combo there. Put him down, and it turned out to be a highlight reel knockdown. The crowd was going crazy for him, big boos and all that. And I talked to Talivaa afterwards, and I'm like, hey man, did those boos affect it in any way? Did you use it as fuel? What was it? And he just goes, nah man, nah bro. Let me tell you this. He just goes, I used either shut it off, and it was nothing, it was just fight mode. He had this sick intro, surrounded by his, I don't know, his friends or his cousins or something, wearing the Samoan outfit, flag and everything. I'm like, this man's ready for war. Now, one thing which I do want to state as well is that Liam Talivaa isn't a particularly big guy in height-wise. Okay, and that's one thing a lot of people probably are not aware of. Now, he's a unit. Let's not be confused about it. His arms as big as my bloody legs. I think that Liam may even have a spot on the world stage at Bridgerweight. Now, I was talking to a few coaches and a few people that have had him previously, and they were saying, hey, listen, he's not particularly tall. We could lose some kilos, go to Bridgerweight, tear it up. All right, he's got the power. That power's going to carry down, I assure you. And this could be something we could have a world champion in that spot here, because I think Australian fighters and a lot of heavyweights kind of can hover in that Bridgerweight division there. All right, we're not particularly big. All right, we have a few big ones here, but I could see us dominating that new division there from the WBC. So I would think that would be a particularly interesting thing for him to do. But listen, we all know the money's in the heavyweights. All right, we want to stay there. We want to keep knocking people out. So that was a big highlight reel knockout for Talivaa. And honestly, we're going to have to see a third fight. We're going to have to see a third fight. That fight's going to always be there for each other. If they might win, lose, whoever they might fight next, that's going to be there. And that's going to be interesting. Now, at that open workout, there was this guy called Jackson Murray. All right, he's a dark horse, all right, in the sense that no one really knows him. However, what happens, what he's done, some of his achievements, all right, he just narrowly missed out from the Olympic team, I think, or / Commonwealth team from Te Moana. However, this guy has been recruited to go overseas and spar with Usyk, Fury, all these types of top heavyweights. AJ, Anthony Joshua. This guy has been getting that experience overseas and bring it back to Australia. He's not this known name like your Justice Hoonies or your Te Moanas or even Talivaa or Brandon Grach right now. However, I think he's this far away from breaking onto the scene. Okay, he's known overseas, now he's got to be known in Australia. And that's only going to happen is beating guys like Grach, being on a no limit card, being on DAZN with a Tasman Fighters card or something like this. Okay, so now the new question, I want you guys to also tell me, because I don't want to disrespect anyone, but I'm kind of semi-made a top 5 list of heavyweights in Australia. Now, this is significant because never before have we had a number of heavyweights with the ability to tangle it with the top guys in the world. Historically speaking, we've had guys like Lucas Brown, who has had a version of the WBA, I think it was, or a version of the heavyweight title. And as we now have multiple contenders, that makes me so excited because I love the heavyweight division. I'm always rooting guys from Ukraine, from the UK. Now to have a couple of Aussies to support, it's pretty nice. Now, my top 5, it's hard to kind of clarify because it's all very new. So these 5 guys are like kind of in their first 15 fights or significantly under. So it's a very new sort of developmental area to talk about. The way I've kind of scaled these guys: history, all right, your last fights, your pedigree as an amateur, and what you've done for me lately. All right, what you've done in your career lately. That's essentially what I've scaled it off, and there might be a little, not bias, but relevancy, like recent relevancy there, perhaps as well. From 5 to 1, I'm gonna have to put right now Jax Murray, a number 5 heavyweight. Now this guy's 6'7". I think he's gonna do a lot of interesting things because not only is he a good boxer, he's been overseas, been in camp with Usyk, AJ, all these top guys and putting in good work, but he's also a good talker, and I think he's gonna, he reminds me of a Tyson Fury in the way he's very charismatic, he's got jokes, and you would see him during the call out. Secondly to that, number 4, Liam Talivaa. And that may be a relevancy thing, but he's got his revenge on Grach. He's a little bit on the smaller side in comparison to a lot of these heavyweights that we have right now. However, I feel like due to that relevancy and that win and that improvement, I think, and that display of power, very nice counter punching ability, and that boxing IQ that he displayed, I feel like he sits at number 4 here. All right, number 3, this one is a bit, I'm not sure, but due to his boxing pedigree, his size, his punch selection, his speed, and maybe a little bias, probably not, I try not to be, is Taramawana Jr. Now this guy is a top prospect right now. He's with Matchroom. He's fighting here a lot. They need to get him overseas. However, I can't put him at number 1 because the level of opposition that he's versed at the moment isn't quite where it should be. Okay, if he gave me a bit more, if he's versed someone like a Jackson Murray, who was meant to fight at one stage, Talivaa, Brandon Grach, any one of these guys, it would solidify it more for me. But right now, we haven't seen enough from him, but what we have seen is pure destruction. Okay, and he's great boxer, just needs that experience and probably needs to verse people a bit more experienced. All right, then we have Goodall here. I think that's pretty sound guy. I think he's from Queensland as well. He's pretty good. He's got to be number 2 because he's probably done a little bit more and a bit more well-rounded at the moment, experienced. Number 1 at the moment, I don't think you can deny this one, but it's got to be Justice Hooney. Right now, another Aussie guy. Justice Hooney is definitely the top heavyweight in Australia at the moment, I'd say. One of the smaller guys, probably a bit more reminiscent of your Usyks, where he's not one-punch cracker. However, I've seen him fight a few times in real life. He is explosive. His punch selection, his combination punching is great. Gas tank's big, so take these big guys into deep waters and drown them. This guy is earmarked in the future for a fight with Mazoudier, so we're going to maybe see that even at the later part of this year. We're not sure, but that's probably my top 5 heavyweights at the moment. I'd like to know your lists and see if I've missed anyone, and just call me crazy if I've missed somebody out, but I feel like at the moment this may be relatively accurate, but you guys let me know. All right, another fight on this Tszyu undercard was a friend of the channel and an all-round great guy, was Mazoudier, and his opponent, Ben Hill. Now, this was for the Australian super welterweight title. Now, this fight was fascinating because we've had Mazoudier just come off a fight of the year with Nikita Tszyu. Almost cooked him, all right? Nikita Tszyu almost got cooked during that, and we know he's the guy, not Tszyu, but he's pretty up there, all right, in popularity. He's got that name. He's pretty entertaining. He's in a lot of action, all action fights. And this is not quite what Cohen's game is, all right? Cohen's a smarter boxer than a lot of people think. Okay. So when he got lured into that fight, he almost cooked him, and it just kind of displayed another angle that he can do, right? He almost got Nikita out of there. And what we know is that potentially they're about to throw in that towel. So that's how close he came to winning. So after a little bit of time off, a little bit of a break, he's now in the winning circle again, all right? Mazoudier wins via unanimous decision against Ben Hill. So Ben Hill, a lot of people don't know, is one tough guy. But what he's actually come from previously is a bit of an MMA background, all right? In this fight, we saw that boxers versus MMA guys again, essentially, right? I think this guy had about 7 professional fights, professional boxing matches. Cohen's had 17. He's had over double his experience. This is what he's done from a very, very young age. Cohen in this fight fought like the guys up there at the Central Coast there, up Umana. He was coming in. It's Lomachenko-esque, all right? It has that strong base in amateur fighting where he'd work the jab and they're always just in range. Now, it's not that Mexican Margarito style pressure where he's coming in, smothering you, big man pressure. No, it's that you're always in range, always in range to strike. And it constantly means that your opponent has to be switched on. We saw that constant pressure, which was tiring Ben out. We saw a knockdown early, round 2 or 3. All right, it was actually really interesting combination because he was well disciplined, Ben Hill. He was keeping his hands out, but he was counterability, he was not quite. So to avoid that, I don't know if this is by design or what happened, but he's working the jab, dominating with a jab. He maybe a bit of a dip there, and then as he goes to throw, there's a bit of a hezzy with the right hand, where he didn't throw it straight away, but he came in, he loaded it up, and it went through just past the guard there, right over the left hand, I think. He scored the knockdown. He said he wanted to jump on it straight away. However, he wanted to stick to the game plan a little bit. You know, a bit of that Cohen malicious Mazoudier came out in him. Now he's son of God. His little alias. He said it came out, but he goes, if he stuck to the game plan, he probably would have got the knockout. So again, he said he wants to just, next time wants to just improve on that, he said. And that's fair enough. But really, what it was at the end of the day was Mazoudier's superior boxing IQ, his defensive prowess. All right, he had a lot of head movement, but where the big difference was between a guy that came from MMA and a guy that's only boxed his whole life is that Cohen was able to catch and shoot, counter, get that timing a lot quicker than Ben, and counter off that and land those shots, and it was constant, right? He scored the knockdown, and then basically what it was, he was mauling him the whole fight. Ben Hill, so tough, okay, such a tough guy. He was taking the shots, and he says, you know, knocked down, he got back up, and he didn't go down, he didn't quit, but this was a one-sided affair. Back in the winning circle from Mazoudier, he claimed the national title here for Australia, and he's really boosted his domestic status. What's in the future for Mazoudier? Man, let me tell you, there could be a Nikita Tszyu too. And this looks like an improved Mazoudier. This looks like someone that stepped up and maybe taking his fight to the next level. So now if he versus Nikita Tszyu again, I'm not sure if they want that. Maybe they go down an easier path, I don't know. But I would strongly recommend that the boxing public, especially Australian boxing public, would want to see that fight again. Maybe in the next major card that they have up in Cairns, or maybe up in, that's the next one I think. Maybe back in Sydney again, because that would be a blockbuster. I'd love to see that. All right. We had Andrei Saavedra versus Mikkel Nielsen, which I think was from Denmark, I think. This fight was great because Andrei Saavedra, he was the guy that fought Matteo Tapia over in Orlando on that undercard of Tszyu and Bakram Murtazalayev. This was a fight where I feel like Nielsen gassed pretty quick, 5 rounds or so, and then Andrei Saavedra just started applying that pressure. More shots were going through, you know, constant pressure, and pressure breaks. Pressure burst pipes, as they say. So what we had here was just a classic, you know, destruction, if you will, of a guy, and just boxing outclass, really. Workmanlike performance, I wrote down here just to solidify that. So another fight, because their last fight with Tapia, Saavedra, and last fight with Tapia was a draw. Maybe they can run that back right now. Maybe they can do something again, because Tapia is looking really good. That last win that he had on the Keith Thurman undercard was a spectacular performance, and I'd love to see that fight again. I don't know if you guys remember the big close-up eye and constant knockdowns between the two, all-action fight, and that'd be great. Now, on to the main event with Tszyu and Joey Spencer. Now, this fight was interesting because this was honestly a make or break for Tszyu. All right, this is going to be a fight that if he loses, his career is on thin ice. It would be on slightly thinner ice. I don't think it would be over. However, everyone would have been like, oh, his confidence gone. He's cooked. He's done. He's had his shot. Yeah, congratulations, you're world champion once, but never again. Joey Spencer was a guy that I appreciated his style. He was strong, durable, decent counterpuncher. And I gave it probably a 60-40 that Tszyu would have got it. All right. Would have had a decent test for Tim. Would have, shown some stuff and maybe shown some improved Tszyu's, defenses, or it might have just sunk him. But I think it was that low possibility of him being knocked out, because he wasn't Spencer wasn't a one-punch knockout guy. Right? Probably didn't have the explosivity or the ability to cause that damage in one punch like Mazoudier, for example. Anyway, the way it ended was a Tszyu fourth round TKO. Now, you have to ask yourself, what did you expect from Tszyu? Okay, I didn't expect him to necessarily change his style. I think he's solidified in how he fights. I think he's solidified in how he goes about his business. Okay, but we wanted to see him return to that. We wanted to see him work the jab, use his boxing IQ, and dismantle them. He often said, and he has said in recent history, that what he did against Mazoudier, he went in there trying to blast him out in the first couple of rounds, as opposed to like, hey, let's figure them out, let's establish the jab, let's do some feints, let's, do all that type of boxing stuff and the stuff that we've seen Tszyu do previously, and then start going to the body and things like that. We'll put it this way. It's kind of was like a 2-round fight, okay? The first 2 rounds were very slow and very slow on offense. All right, I don't know if it was Tszyu being a bit cautious or if it was Joey Spencer being a bit cautious, but almost nothing happened. All right, I might have given the first round to Joey Spencer because he landed a couple of jabs on the and a couple of maybe right hands on the guard. Really, nothing went through in that first round. But one thing I did notice about Tszyu is that footwork and that defensive footwork was a lot quicker. And that's one thing I noticed immediately, and I'm like, maybe that's something I've been working on. He was more defensively sound, defensively responsible, didn't want to go in there and try and smoke him like he did with Mazoudier. So that's one thing I did take from it. All in all, it was a peculiar TKO I found, because it's not like, I don't know, maybe my vantage point didn't quite tell the story and I haven't been able to watch it back. But I don't feel like Joey Spencer took too much damage. I mean, we saw his eye afterwards, like immediately after. It was all bruised and a bit effed up immediately. So maybe he did take a bit of damage. And maybe perhaps it was that left to the body that Tszyu landed, I think, in round 4, before the onslaught continued, that caused the damage. And Spencer's corner was just like, no, that's enough. That's enough. Our guy can't hit him, all right? Our guy can't close the distance and hit Tszyu. Tszyu's countering too well. Okay. Maybe it was something like that. Maybe there was an injury or something going on that we don't know about. I'm not sure. Nothing's come out. That's just pure speculation. However, we have to see, because I found an early throw-in of the towel from Spencer's team. However, again, back to what I was saying with Tszyu, he was really used that boxing IQ. He slowly dismantled him, and it was a sniper Okay, and when he got his guy hurt with the slip to the body, okay, he saw the air go out of his lungs, and then he just started descending on him. And he said he was watching some David Benavidez highlights and fights before then, so he just wanted to see those big 5-punch, 10-punch combos once he gets his guys hurt. And then they just run the town. They go, that's enough seen. So I found that funny. I thought Joey Spencer would have put up essentially more of a fight than that, but can we say that Tim Tszyu is back? I'm not sure. I can't say, hey, Tim Tszyu's back. I'd like to see him do this against a slightly higher opposition. Not to say that Joey Spencer wasn't decent opposition. All right, he was a strong contender. He was somebody, respectable. However, it was probably perfect opportunity for Tim Tszyu to get back into these world rankings, to say I'm back, essentially. All right, so it goes on. The significant comeback for Tszyu, tick. Post-fight comments from Tszyu. Now, he came down, sat down, you doubted me, and, a few people did. Honestly, they did. I don't like to doubt someone until they prove it. Okay, I never thought that Tim Tszyu was done. I just felt like he probably didn't go in with the appropriate game plan. And like most fighters and most people in life, you actually have to make a correction in how you go about your business, how you go about your craft, and I'm sure they've done it. Maybe it was the footwork that looked a lot quicker from Tim Tszyu. That's one thing. Maybe he was a bit more defensively responsible. He said he wanted to be more patient, and that's what we wanted to see, really, from Tim Tszyu for Tim Tszyu to be back. Now, immediately afterwards, he goes, hey, this is going out to the world saying that I'm back. I'm back to cause trouble. And I think he still can. And he goes, listen, bro, I'm going to give out a list of five, 6 people that I want. All right, that's my best Tim Tszyu impersonation. But he goes, hey, I want Fedora. I want Bakram Murtazayev again. I asked him again, I go, bro, is that a name that you wanted that rematch? Or is that a name that you never want to hear again in your life? He's like, nah, I want Bakram again. I'm going to go on there, be more patient, get him. Virgil Ortiz, he said he wants it. And as we saw online recently, Keith Thurman was actually saying that he wanted to fight Tim Tszyu. Now, I think this is the intention of No Limit in the sense that Keith Thurman has just recently fought and beat Brock Jarvis, all right? He's put on a great performance. He looked great. He's a big name. If Tim Tszyu were to fight him and do a number on him, that would propel him right there, up into the ranks. Because, I feel like Keith Thurman still has it. I feel like Keith Thurman looked fantastic. And sure, it was a mismatch with Brock Jarvis, but I feel like he still has it. So, in my mind, I think it's going to be a Keith Thurman fight next. Maybe one more, hey, let's see if Tim Tszyu's back or not. In Australian soil, he seems to perform very well in Australian soil. So, that's a potential. But he said number 1 on his list was Fedora. And I would love to see that fight, honestly. I feel like Fedora's made improvements since that fight. However, Tim Tszyu was smashing that first fight. Before that massive cut on his forehead, I feel like Tim Tszyu would have got him out there in maybe 6 rounds. Right, he was hitting some mad counters. He was coming through, body, head, mad. It looked very nice what he was doing. I would love to see a rematch with that to get his title back. All right. Listen, Fedora is still looking good. All right, he's using that height. He's a good inside fighter. That big man pressure is a bit different. But I feel like if that cut didn't happen, that he would have won that fight. Tim Tszyu would have won that fight. But we'll never know, and I can't hold that. And it's not like I'm the number 1 Tim Tszyu fan in the world, all right? Or I'm Australian, he's Australian, how I'm going to back him. I feel like he had it. But we'll see if that runs back. But right now, let's go. Congratulations to Tim Tszyu. Potentially Keith Thurman's going on next. He said he wanted to bring it back to Australia, so that's going to be a banger if it does come here. Cannot wait. All right. We're on the road. I'm Guy McKinnon. This is N Still Boxing.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the channel.